Dr. Singleton, great to have you with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Good morning.
So I know you got a lot going on here, but you're a doctor. You're also a lawyer. You got an MD and a JD. I don't find a lot of doctor lawyers around too much. And you also have an op-ed that was up on WND the other day, and you said that the savaging of Attorney General Barr and hydroxychloroquine doctors. The question that we have had through this whole debate is the relationship between myself and my doctor is between us, right? I want to keep my doctor. And if I have COVID-19 and my doctor prescribes that, why is the government or the media involved in that prescription?
The media has inserted themselves into our doctor-patient relationship purely for political purposes, and I just find it sickening and disgusting. And they can go on and on about how Trump is killing people and this, that, and the other, but the media is who's killing people, scaring them half silly, and then when there's something that clinically and indeed in the lab doctors have found that works, it appears that the moment President Trump said something positive, the drug became negative. The moment it was clear that an entire course of treatment with the drug, a generic drug that's been around for 65 years, which no one would make any money on, the whole course of treatment is $30, $40 max, and versus $3,000 a dose for remdesivir, which Dr. Fauci said, well, this should be the standard of care, even though it doesn't even work that well. And even Dr. Fauci, many moons ago, and 15 years ago, had said that chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine was effective against SARS. We had another SARS virus back in 2003.
Right.
So politics has entered medicine, and it seems now quite irretrievably. And you have to wonder, if this weren't an election year, would we be talking more like people did when Truman and Eisenhower were president when we had polio? Were they excoriated for giving people polio? No. Did anybody even think about talking about the various treatments doctors were giving for polio? No. So we're in a whole new world that is not good for patients, and the fear that it instills in people is the anxiety. And the CDC just released their study that showed that 40% of people are reporting some sort of mental problem because of this COVID, and 25% of young adults have seriously committed suicide or considered committing suicide. Now, something's wrong somewhere. And when we have a drug that at least is giving people hope and has helped people, we've had Democrats, even Amy Klobuchar, admitted that her husband took it. So, my goodness, but somehow it's bad.
Dr. Marilyn Singleton with us, Job Creators Network, part of the effort to flatten the fear about COVID-19, and we appreciate you coming on, Marilyn. Thank you, Dr. Singleton. But, I'll go you one better. If Hillary Clinton was elected president in 2016, and she was running for re-election right now, and she had said the same thing that Trump said about hydroxychloroquine. He got all this evidence of people that it helped. But again, I don't even focus on that. If my doctor prescribes it for me, I'm going to have a conversation with him. But Morning Joe and MSNBC should not be involved in that decision. That's what's infuriating me, nor should it be on Jerry Nadler's desk in Congress. It's between me and my doctor. But you have to admit, if Clinton was president and everything was the same, what would the reaction to this drug be?
Oh, people would be praising it and saying how wonderful it was. Now, of course, we have the other issue of how much is our big pharma involved, how much is money involved. I would hate to think that money is what's directing patient care. because that really makes you cringe. Certainly doctors want to try to give the drug that they think is going to work. And if there's some puppet master up there who says, oh, no, this drug is too cheap, we need to give people an expensive one, that would be criminal. But if we keep it at the level of politics, and we certainly saw it last night at the Democratic Convention, is that President Trump is who made you sick from the SARS virus. Period. End of story. It's not that it's a highly contagious virus. It's not that he closed down the border to China. It's not that China let this thing go since October and didn't tell anybody. Oh, no. That's never going to come up.
Unbelievable. This, we have a drug that so many people are saying that they've had success with, and yet it's trashed in the media. And you're right. I mean, part of it you have to look at could be the financial rewards that big pharma is going to come up with much more expensive therapeutics than hydroxychloroquine is. So that's part of it. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're live with Dr. Marilyn Singleton, part of the Job Creators Network group of doctors who are looking at flattening the fear, getting kids back to school. Let me change gears here a minute, Dr. Singleton, and let's get to kids going back to school. In a report yesterday, school is supposed to open in a section of Phoenix, Arizona, where that school board voted for kids to go back to school in classroom because the number of COVID, I guess, positive cases were declining for 6 weeks. The teachers, Dr. Singleton, staged a walkout, a sick out. So they didn't show up. The kids showed, the teachers didn't show. At what point do parents say they've had enough here?
I think parents are already saying they had enough. It's very interesting, this school closure. Number one, for people who claim to care about kids, what really bothers me is the poor kids, the minority kids, are the ones who are suffering. Up to 40% of them aren't even participating in remote learning, ever. And can you imagine these children sitting at home with parents who don't know how to use the computer, and they're supposed to be learning, parents who don't push them to study, and that's part of the educational problem in the first place. And so the teachers have just abandoned those kids, and the parents are fighting back. And I think the mask has come off that the union is not the same as individual teachers. And I think people try to make that clear. Nobody hates an individual teacher, but how they've been captured by the union. How is a teacher any less essential than the guy who's at the cash register at the Safeway? He's more essential.
Well, sure. But, in their minds, look, they've been able to stay at home and do Zoom and get paid, and now they got the teachers' unions behind it, and kids are suffering, and the whole thing is sick. We've politicized that as well. We're with Dr. Marilyn Singleton. She's a doctor. She's also got her JD. She's a lawyer and a doctor. She has a piece on WND. She had an op-ed, The Savaging of AG Barr and Hydroxychloroquine Doctors. And she also pointed out that Amy Klobuchar's husband had COVID-19, and he took hydroxychloroquine as a therapeutic, and he got better immediately. So it's just amazing to me. But still, she's out there saying you can't have it. So basically what she's saying is no one else can have it, but, when it comes to my husband, he can have it because I want him to be okay, so he can have. Isn't that kind of elitist?
Well, this is enigmatic of the whole problem. It's what's right for me, but not for thee. And we just see this across the board with one thing after another. And I think people are finally catching on. And one of the things that some parents I've spoken with that they've gotten out of the school closure is they realize some of the drivel that children are being taught in school. And so the upside is homeschooling has increased, true homeschooling, and parents started these teaching pods where they could help each other out. And one of the things that really amuses me, in sort of a sick way, is that children can go to daycare for the parents who've been able to go to work, yet they can't go to school. So from an epidemiological standpoint, what's the difference of daycare and school? And the difference seems to be the teachers' union.
It's exactly the teachers' union, but I think you're right. I think you're right, Dr. Singleton. We've been saying this now for a couple of weeks. I think there's going to be a shakeout, and there's going to be a consequence to this. People taking a second look at what is my child really learning in these public schools, and a lot of unfortunately, a lot of parents, which is why I'm for charter schools, don't have the money or the resources. They only have one car, working mom, single home. They can't move their kids around. But I think a lot of people are going to look at this home pod thing and say, yeah, I can split the cost with 15 other families. It's a safe environment. I can better control what my son or daughter is being taught, then get a better education. Maybe homeschooling in these pods is not a bit, because when you think of homeschooling, you think, okay, I got to download all this stuff, I got to pay for it, I got to buy it, then I got to stay home and I got to do it 8 hours, and maybe I got 3 kids and I have to work, I can't do that, or I just don't want to do it. Not everybody's cut out for that. But then you go to the pods where you hire somebody that's managing it. I think that's a little bit of a different situation. And I know there's a group that I'm familiar with in Virginia Beach where there's 20 people in it, and one day a month, because there's 20 school days in a month, right? They go to a different home. So you're only home that one day. And then they've hired somebody to manage it who's a teacher, and they split that by 20. And then they have one parent there who's a person home. So they have 2 people, 20 days, minimal cost, and that's been working out for them so far for 2 weeks. That might be a model going forward, right?
Absolutely, and I just think it's a great model. Years ago, I had a patient who did something similar, and indeed, all the children were taught together, and they had the full age range from 5 up to kids in high school, and the high school kids would teach one class to the little ones. My patient's daughter taught creative writing to the little ones. I mean, so here you have this very, very good model that keeps people communing with each other. And this shifts back to why we have these lockdowns and keeping people afraid to leave their homes, because they don't want people talking to one another and encouraging one another. That this is not good for the narrative that life is bad in America. Life is good in America, and but we have to be kept miserable in order to prove that the current administration is awful.
Boy, you nailed it, Dr. Marilyn Singleton with us. That is the Democratic narrative. Life is bad in America. You have to change the incumbent. You have to get the incumbent president out. That's what this whole thing is about. I mean, I've never seen, let's take college football. I've never seen the media and the Democrats coming together to put immense pressure on college football to cancel. Why? Why do they care what the University of Florida does, or the University of Georgia, or where I am, the University of Virginia or Virginia Tech? Why do they care? Because they want to keep people miserable. That's the narrative. Your life is horrible. There's no college football. Meantime, they're playing baseball. A total of, 15, 18, 20, about 30 players have tested positive. They're not sick, so we have to stop saying that. 20 players got sick. No, they tested positive. Out of 30 players that tested positive, not one of them had a symptom. They weren't even carrying a Kleenex to blow their nose. They had no sniffles. They had no cold. They had no fever. They had nothing. Because they're 24-year-old, 22, 23, 28, healthy guys, athletes. None of them had a single symptom, not one time. And now they're back playing baseball. Yet, the mob media wanted Manfred, the commissioner of the NBA, to shut the MLB down, shut it down, create fear, and take away what little entertainment that we have watching them on TV with the cutout fans. Right? Have you ever seen? I mean, it ties into exactly what you said. Make me miserable, and I'll vote for Biden.
That's exactly right, and you hit the nail on the head with this whole thing with cases. I am so sick of the sidebar on CNN that gives these raw numbers. So and so many people died, so many cases. Well, many of these things are not quote unquote cases. They are not sick people. These are people who had a positive test for the SARS virus. They do not have the COVID-19 disease. Yet, these numbers make it look like there's all these ill people crawling around the earth, and that's just not the case. And trotting out these poor, sad people that lost a loved one to COVID, and somehow it's like President Trump had a knife and stabbed them to death. It's absurd. It's positively ridiculous. And, of course, no one is doing the same thing to Governor Cuomo, who really did institute a policy that helped kill all those people in the nursing homes. So this coverage is bad. People are affected by it. And what makes it worse, because they aren't going out, they're sitting at home watching this drivel on television all day long.
Unbelievable. We're out of time. I want to thank Dr. Marilyn Singleton for being with us. Dr. Singleton, great job.